Good morning and welcome back to Black Ass Heart History Presents. Y'all late to the revolution. Chapter 1 Resistance from the Beginning. This is part 4 with the Haiti or Haiti Revolution. Disclaimer: the content, images, and language that you are about to experience may be offensive and may lead to triggers. Viewer discretion is advised. Black Ass Heart History is committed and dedicated to educating its audiences on a diaspora of melanated people, with the intent to provide an honest and holistic history of our narratives. We are committed to ensuring our history and stories are not filtered through white supremacy indoctrination, dogma, and pseudo-social science. So today we're going to focus on the Haiti or Haiti and the revolution. Originally, Hispaniola was inhabited by Taino people, an Arawak-speaking tribe of the Caribbean, Castaway and Haiti. In 1492, Columbus landed in Hispaniola. Within 25 years, the roughly 2 million population decreased between 85 to 95% since encountering Europeans. Now, the first enslaved persons were the Taino people. The Taino people experienced abuse, beating, rape, death, not only by killing, but by the old world diseases that they were not accustomed to or immune to. In 1500, due to population decrease, Taino enslavement was outlawed. It was thanks to the efforts of a Spaniard named Bartolome de las Casas, who had empathy for the Taino people. However, he did recommend the use of African enslaved labor for plantations. So this is just an example of a typical lithograph of a plantations. Enslaved Africans were called Negros Ladinos. These were cultivated Africans, often Christianized under the authorization of the Spanish crown. The other were called Negros Bozales, Negroes that are captured right off the coast of Africa. It did not matter if they were Christianized or not. The enslaved Africans faced some of the most horrible atrocities as the Taino people. However, they too would escape to create maroon colonies and even prepare for uprisings. So let's talk about one of the earlier ones, which is the Wolof Revolt. From the Wolof tribe, which is present-day Senegambia and Mali. So on December 25th, 1521, Maria Olofa and Gonzalo Mandingo led the first revolt in Africa, and it lasted about a week. On January 6, 1522, Black laws would be enforced immediately to quench any uprisings. These laws were introduced would limit mobility and movement of all Black people once they arrived to the island. Harsher punishment and rebellions also meant beatings and or deaths. Next we have is Sebastian Limba. Limba was actually captured off the shores of West Africa and brought to the Caribbean in 1525. They rebelled and escaped to the mountainous regions of the island, soon organized a rebellion between 150 to 400 men. At the time, Captain Tristan de Legozoman captured Limba's maroon colony. However, Limba would still attack the plantations and burn the properties by night. Even though De La Guzuma took Limba's colony and rations, and even women and children, Limba would actually reach the port of St. Juan, and even to also take all the iron and crucial parts of sugarcane cultivation tools, so they're still on the plantations could not work. Unfortunately, on September 25th, 1547, Limba was captured and ultimately murdered. Next we have is Padre. He was enslaved on Hispaniola in 1676, attempted to overthrow the plantation and his master. He was trying to put a revolution together. He would eventually escape to Tortuga Island, which I believe is in the northwest corner of Hispaniola. But 3 years later, in 1679, the Maroons were sent by the French to kill him. So let's get into the birth of Santo Domingo, or what we know as Haiti. So let's talk about the French pirates in the Tortuga Island. As Spain was settling in Hispaniola, it was not uncommon for pirates of other countries to follow. Tortuga Island was located off northwest of Hispaniola. French pirates would attack the settlement of Iguana in 1543 and later on in 1592. The remaining Spanish would battle with both French and British envoys for Hispaniola. It would be the coast of present-day Mexico and Central America seemed to be more profitable with the gold and silver. The Spanish would soon become less than invested in Hispaniola as rebellions and closing of ports happened across Europe. Many countries did direct trade with the European colonies. So this is how the colonies begin to build their wealth. As wars and rebellions continued throughout the century, the Spanish finally conceded to France, obtaining a portion of the land. So in 1697, French obtained the western part of Hispaniola French territory and named it Saint Domingue, or present day Haiti, and the Spanish territory was the east, Santo Domingo, or what we know as the Dominican Republic. Saint Domingue would become France's most lucrative colony. The exportation of sugar, coffee, indigo, and cotton would make it wealthy to the point where Saint Domingue would make more money for France than all the 13 colonies. So this is the class structure of Saint Domingue. So there was 5 tiers. Grand Blancs, of course, were European. They were the plantation and estate owners. Petit Blancs, they were also European. Artisan and shopkeepers, but they wanted the rights of the Grand Blancs. So keep in mind, each class structure had limitation. The mulattoes, they were racially mixed. They intermingled with the Blancs, and even some of them married into Grand Blancs and Petit Blancs. There were the free blacks who just wanted the rights of the Blancs. And lastly, you have the enslaved persons who wanted freedom. This also included the self-emancipating persons or the maroon colonies. Now, what was interesting, the Petit Blancs could not trade with any other countries and had tariffs. However, they were committed to slavery. The mulatto class was freed in 1789. It was roughly 30,000. And then enslaved persons outnumbers the Blancs, both Grand and Petit, 10 to 1. So now you can see how the rebellion started to become common. So let's talk about my boy Francois Macadal. He was probably one of my favorite maroon leaders to learn about. He was a Hugon voodoo priest. We also know that Macadal was Muslim because of his knowledge of the Quran. Keep in mind, rebellion did not always come in the way of guerrilla warfare, but in other methodologies. Hugon is a priest that knew not only how to work with the spiritual world, but how to concoct herbs in a very specific way. Essentially, he taught the Maroons and the enslaved people how to poison their masters and owners of their estate, but also helped them understand which plants were edible. He was eventually captured and burned alive. The legend is upon his death, he told the French he would come back as a mosquito. Soon, the French would begin to perish due to the infestation of mosquitoes and them carrying malaria. So tensions continued to rise, especially since the French Revolution was well on its way, and they were specifically inspired by the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which was part of the French Revolution. Next, we have Cecilia Fatiman. Her mother was an enslaved African, and her father was a white Frenchman. Mambo derives from the Fon word Nambo, which means mother of magic. She was a voodoo priestess, and it was also her involvement in a ceremony with another Mambo named Duddy Boukman that would energize the spirit of what would be the Haitian Revolution. So Duddy Boukman was originally born in Senegambia and arrived in Jamaica. He is an ulama. Ulamas are individuals born to an educated class of scholar, theologians, mullahs, and judges. He was born Muslim, and he caused so much strife in Jamaica that he was sold to the French. And the reason that he was sold to the French were the absolute most gruesome enslavers. They were known for seasoning their slaves. Seasoning plantations were when enslaved persons spent 3 to 5 years before going into a permanent plantation. That means they were fed a meat diet, but still forced to work long hours. They were kept huddled in tight confinements to see how their bodies would deal with different diseases and viruses. And this was also, seasoned plantations were also breeding camps. So some of the women were bred. It was just a horrendous experience for these enslaved people, in addition to what they would go through. So Bookman, as a Muslim, refused to give up his Quran. So they set it on fire and burned his book to him, hence how he's got the name Bookman. He too was a Mambo like Cecilia. He would later become a preacher, and his words would motivate the movement. So let's talk about the meeting that sparks the revolution. In August 1791, there was presided over a Bos ceremony at Bois Common. So this ceremony had traditional rituals, including offering of an animal and an oath to take revenge on against the French. In summary, Bookman just said, cast aside the God of the oppressors. And in the meeting, the legend is that Cecilia becomes Ursula Danson. She is a Lao associated with water, fluidity, femininity, and she is the protector of the neglected society. At the same time, Bookman predicts men to lead the revolution, include Jean-François Papillon, Georges Brosseau, and Genois would be the leaders. So the Haitian Revolution commences. The last straw was when local legislation giving rights to whites and free blacks, although the blacks did not have the power of the whites, and still those that are enslaved remain enslaved. So on August 22nd, 1791, thousands of enslaved persons began to attack the planters' owners and set plantations on fire. White landowners were snatched from their homes and murdered, including their wives and children. Their heads were placed on spike. By September, roughly 100,000 enslaved persons had joined this revolution. So, within a few weeks, this is what's happening. So, let's learn about some of the key figures. There is Toussaint Louverture. He was born enslaved on Saint-Domingue. He was a devout Catholic and manumitted. He would actually become an overseer on his former plantation. He would also own his own plantation as well as enslaved persons. At the beginning of the revolution, he actually sided with the Spanish when they were warring with the French, but switched allegiance to the French when they abolished slavery. He became a general in the French army. He heavily admired the French. So Louverture really wanted to be accepted by the French. He was a valiant fighter. He was educated. He was cultured. He was okay with the French. Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who was born into slavery on Saint-Domingue, he worked at plantations, and he worked indigo, coffee, and of course the most brutal was sugar. He hated all supporter of slavery. It would be a free black man who purchased him so he could earn his freedom. He fought in the French military, but would become Toussaint's lieutenant during the Haitian Revolution. Unlike Toussaint, Dessalines never trusted the French or any of the oppressors. So by 1792, the former enslaved persons had now controlled about a third of Saint-Domingue. Within 2 months, 900 coffee plantations destroyed, 180 in sugar and indigo plantations, and up to 4,500 whites have been murdered. At this point, they just wanted to end slavery and not the independence from France. Britain will come to the island and restore slavery on the island, which continued the revolts and war. Leger Felicite Sonathax, the de facto ruler of Haiti at this time, was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He was also an abolitionist too, so the French sent a new governor and grant rights to the free people of the color of France, still in control in 1793. Now, simultaneously, France declared war with Britain. Now, the Great Blancs are frustrated with France because of this notion that they're going to be free. So they reached out to Britain to give the colony to Great Britain. Britain reached out to Spain to partner with Santo Domingo so they can take over Saint Domingue. Meanwhile, there's John Baptiste Bellemare. He was captured off Gorée Island near Dakar, Senegal, and he sold and sent to Saint Domingue. He was actually able to purchase his freedom. He joined the free black and mulatto military called the Volunteer Chasseurs, and he actually fought in the country of Georgia. After the fight, he would return to Saint Domingue due to the Haitian Revolution. So the French end slavery in the National Convention. So again, Leger Félicité Sonathax, French abolitionists, attempted to work with both the white and black planters who did not want slavery to end. Keep in mind, there were black planters too. And the uprising, he just went ahead and decided to end slavery on August 29th in 1793 in the northern province. The other provinces would do so in 1794. Belly Mars and another free black man named Jean-Baptiste Mills would actually go to speak at the France at the National Convention to abolish slavery. And by 1795, the French had abolished slavery. So let's talk about Toussaint partnering with France. So Toussaint switched and partnered with France to expel the Spanish from Saint Domingue because they had abolished slavery. So Britain now landed on Saint Domingue, but it was not enough for them to control the island, but they're going to attempt to take over. Due to yellow fever, high cost of funds, and British soldiers' lives, the British would just withdraw from the ports. Toussaint and Dessalines will battle to the British, and by 1800, they had consolidated Domingue. So at this point, the Haitians have Saint Domingue. In 1801, Toussaint drafts this constitution and sends it to Napoleon. Just let Napoleon know, like, listen, don't send nobody else. I'm going to declare myself as Saint Domingue's lifelong governor. Baby, Napoleon is furious. I mean, little man was going all the way off. So, with that being said, he sent his brother-in-law, Charles Leclerc, to restore French control of Saint-Domingue and also to defend Toussaint. Now, he's telling Leclerc, like, Napoleon wants to meet you. Why don't you go to France? You should come to France. Dessalines looking at Toussaint like, bruh, this ain't it. This is not it. We're not doing this. Ignoring Dessalines, Toussaint goes to France. He is arrested and would die in the French prison. Now, when Leclerc died over in Saint-Domingue, Napoleon would send Rochambeau in 1802 to invade Saint-Domingue. So let's talk about Donatien Marie Joseph de Rochambeau. If there was somebody that was worse than worse, and worse after that, it would be this barbaric Frenchman who served in the Revolutionary War. He was just horrific. He was sent by Napoleon in 1802 to not only recapture Saint-Domingue, but to reinstate slavery. He had already done so in other French colonies and territory. Rochambeau did not only attack the free and enslaved Africans, but he tormented and murdered the mulattoes as well. So a quick story was he was getting buddy-buddy with the mulatto women. Some of them were married to other mulatto men. Some were married to the Grand or Petite Blancs. So there was like this fancy dinner and gathering. He invited them into this room where he gave them presents. So the ladies are excited and getting presents. When they opened the presents, it was their husband's heads in the boxes. So now we are seeing a shift where the mulattoes like, oh, we're not safe either. So now you have the maroons, you have the free black folks, and now you have the mulattoes all coming together to fight this. He and Dessalines would actually battle it out. And for every black person Rochambeau harmed or killed, Dessalines would do to the French. The Battle of Vertières, November 18th of 1803. This would be the final battle between Dessalines and his military and Rochambeau and the French. Cape Francis was the last stronghold the French had on the island. Although the rebels had limited artillery, they charged the French. So one of the Haitian fighters was named Francois Choisse, and he led on horseback. So he led the front. When his horse was shot by the French, he fell off, grabbed his sword, and continued to fight. Rochambeau was so impressed by the valiance and the fighting of the Haitians that he sent his general to stop the battle to compliment how amazing the rebels fought. Wait a minute. You're impressed that we're fighting you for our land and to keep our freedom. Okay, cool. Once the compliment was given, the fight proceeded. Eventually, Rochambeau realized that in addition with the rebelling and the downpour rain that was happening, he's not going to win this. Dessalines would receive negotiations from Rochambeau. The French had 10 days to prepare to leave and return to France. Legend has it that Dessalines advised Rochambeau that he nor anyone else would ever return to Saint-Domingue again. Haiti's independence on January 1st, 1804. Dessalines declares independence of Haiti, renaming Saint Domingue the name that the Taínos called the land. He would become the first emperor slash dictator of Haiti. Now here's the killer part. All the remaining white folks, with a few groups excluded, were to be massacred. So in essence, between 3,000 and 5,000 people. The groups that were excluded were non-French and non-British. So I think there was some Polish, Jewish, Irish over there as well. They were welcome to stay. Anybody that was in the health field, like doctors, nurses, they're welcome to stay. Any white woman that would marry a Haitian man, they were welcome to stay. However, due to the desolation of the land, so the different scorching of the earth, the famine, war in general, he enacted serfdom. So, for those who don't know what serfdom is, basically, it's like sharecropping for back then. You had to serve in some sort of way the specific government. It wasn't independent. You didn't get no independence. You had to serve them, either by labor or in military. So now this is causing tension between the laborers, the mulattoes, because the mulattoes, they never had to do hard labor or serve in the military, and Dessalines' ideal government. He would be assassinated. Unfortunately for Haiti, it was over before it began. In 1825, French King Charles X sent military to Haiti demanding to pay 150 million francs reparation tax, but it was reduced to 90 million francs. So basically, because we lost, because you cost us so much money, not only in the war that we had to fight you, but for our properties, as well as our goods and services that we were exporting, y'all gonna pay us back. Because Haiti did not have that kind of money. They had to take out loans and borrow money to pay France back. So they were in perpetual debt with France. They would have to pay the former slaveholders and their descendants anywhere from $20 billion to $30 billion in over 120 years. And this is our current numbers today. France told Haiti, "You owe us," and the economy never got a chance to rebound. So let's do a quick recap. The French would expel the Spanish from a portion of Hispaniola and rename in Santo Domingue. Spirituality and herbalism were crucial forms of resistance in addition to battles and war. Numerous enslaved persons of the Akan, Ashanti, Wolof, and more were fierce warriors and battled the French. Although negotiations between France, its colonies, and the stolen Africans commenced, war eventually led to Haiti's victory. Haiti may have been the first Black republic. However, it took over 120 years to pay the debt of France losing Haiti. Thank you all, and I hope you all enjoy, and stay tuned for the next Black Ass Art History.